The Nokia Lumia 1020 is a legend among camera phones. Despite being 5 years old, its 41 megapixel rear shooter is still top of the class. But now, there's a new challenger in our midst. The Huawei P20 Pro with its 40 megapixel sensor and a host of other features. Even with the advantage of youth though, this is no whitewash. While the P20 Pro ups the game in some respects with its Leica branding and a wider f1.8 aperture versus the Nokia's f2.2, the 1020 hits back with a larger 1 and 1.5 inch sensor versus the 1 and 1.7 inch, as well as larger pixel sizes at 1.12 microns versus 1 micron. And the Lumia 1020 also boasts optical image stabilization. But the Huawei makes up for these apparent downsides in creative ways. It features optical stabilization in at least one lens, AI stabilization for the rest, and potentially even more hidden optical stabilization according to some teardowns. The P20 Pro also sports something called pixel binning technology, which combines 4 pixels into a single 2 micron pixel. This creates a 10 megapixel image that captures more light and reduces noise as a result. And the Huawei P20 Pro also gets some more hits in with its 3x optical zoom, made possible by an 8 megapixel telephoto lens. The Lumia 1020 instead has a lossless 5 megapixel zoom, which works by cropping in on the original 38 megapixel image up to 2.7 times to preserve more detail than your traditional digital zoom. As an Android Authority loyalist, you'll no doubt know that the P20 Pro actually has a whopping 3 different lenses. Another first. That other lens is a 20 megapixel monochrome sensor, which is used to improve the dynamic range capture. It also uses its AI in a range of creative ways to offer things like scene recognition. But as anyone who has used a smartphone camera can attest, numbers and buzzwords can only tell us so much. The proof is in the pudding, as they say, or in this case, the photo of the pudding. So Rob put both these cameras through their paces, and this is what he found. To kick things off, we're looking at the high resolution performance and the amount of detail that each camera can pick out while keeping noise to a minimum. We're really looking for clarity here. Looking at outdoor shots shows a very similar level of detail at medium ranges. However, the P20 Pro is able to resolve finer details at a distance, though it is a close call. The P20 Pro also manages to handle outdoor exposure and white balance a lot better, and was the least noisy sensor. But that said, the P20 Pro's aggressive post-processing also added in a fair amount of over-sharpening. In some shots it appears as though there's almost a white border around some of the details, certainly not to everyone's tastes. Macro. The P20 Pro also managed to produce more detail in macro shots. That said, it's also still guilty of that harsh sharpening pass, which is a little overbearing in some cases. The Lumia 1020 has a softer look, for better or for worse, but it's also a little noisier. There's also a little colour smudging, with certain details getting lost in translation. On the whole then, when it comes to getting the most out of those huge megapixel counts, it's the P20 Pro that comes out on top. That said, both these phones take outstanding pictures, and you have to give the Nokia props considering its age. Next up is low light performance. This is a tough test for any smartphone camera, especially those with smaller pixels packed into high resolution sensors. It's also pretty important though, as many of us will use our cameras to snap pictures on nights out or to capture cosy evenings at home with a good book. Both phones do a tremendous job here once again. The Lumia manages to pick out a little more colour and brightens focal objects nicely. That said, the Huawei P20 Pro is a little less noisy upon closer inspection. The post-processing is overachieving in that area, though this does once again result in some over-sharpening and harsh-looking edges. Overall, it's a very close call here. The P20 Pro has less noise and greater detail, but the Lumia offers a slightly more lifelike result. But before we can call this one, the P20 Pro has another trick up its sleeve, thanks to that pixel binning mode, and it clearly pays off too, as combining 4 pixels into one results in even greater noise reduction while preserving plenty of detail. Finally, let's get a little closer and see how the zoom features hold up under scrutiny. Both use very different technologies and both have very different results. Despite not being a true optical zoom, the Lumia's 5 megapixel crops look good and certainly preserve plenty of detail. Of course, you could just crop the 40 megapixel images yourself though, so it's only really useful for saving space or saving time. The Huawei P20 Pro's hybrid zoom technology is able to capture great detail too, thanks to that higher 10 megapixel resolution. But once again, that over-sharpening rears its head. But on the whole, there's no arguing that this camera produces the cleaner looking images when zoomed. It can also zoom in considerably further before quality starts to drop, thanks to that telephoto lens. Even the 5x hybrid zoom manages to preserve a remarkable amount of detail for a smartphone. So to wrap things up then, the Huawei P20 Pro emerges victorious. And that's before we consider things like video with slow motion, portrait mode, or front-facing cameras. And that's pretty much the outcome you'd hope for and expect, considering the 5 years of technological innovation that it has over the Lumia 1020. But with that said, it's not quite the whitewash that you might have expected. The P20 Pro is certainly technically superior and capable of capturing more detail with less noise, but the sharpening will be somewhat divisive. The Lumia's softer images lend themselves to more flexible editing and result in a less harsh final product. The Nokia Lumia 1020 was clearly well ahead of its time then, and it's still a competitive shooter even today. With its flexibility, low light performance and extra sensors, the P20 Pro takes the win. But the Lumia 1020 can still hold its head high, having put up one heck of a fight. It's like Rocky at the end of Rocky Balboa.
There's nothing more to prove, Pa. There's nothing more to prove.
So thanks a ton for watching, guys. Hope you found this video useful and interesting. If you did, then be sure to check out the full article over at the site. The link will be in the description down below. Also check us out on social media, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell button for notifications, and visit the website at androidauthority.com, for we are your source for all things Android.